Fuck. I already know you're going to put that in the beginning of the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a cinematic odyssey through the 100 greatest films spanning from the roaring 1920s to the cutting-edge masterpieces of 2024. Carefully curated from the lovely people on Letterboxd. Two intrepid souls embark on a journey through a treasure trove of timeless classics and groundbreaking contemporary works, where each frame embodies the enduring magic of the silver screen. Grab your popcorn and join us on this epic expedition through a century of cinematic excellence, where every film promises to enchant, inspire, and leave an indelible mark on the soul. And now, for your listening pleasure, here are the LetterBros.
Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of LetterBros, where we let a wheel decide our fate and what movie we will watch next based off the top 100 movies on Letterboxd. As always, I'm Felix, and I'm joined by Parker. How we doing today, buddy?
Doing good, Felix. I'm doing good. I wish that the sun was up for a little bit longer. You know, the daylight savings has been taking its toll. I miss the days of 7 p.m. sunsets, but alas, they will come again. But other than that, I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to discuss this movie. We kind of went back to what we were getting a lot of in the first run of films that the wheel was summoning to us. And it was an interesting dive. I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Same here. So for those who didn't watch the last episode, we landed on Sansho The Bailiff, a 1954 Japanese film. In my opinion, it fucking rocks, dude. I'm like not gonna lie. It's gonna be one up there on one of my favorite of the Japanese films that we've been watching, but we'll dive a little bit more into it as we go along. But I'll let Parker take the reins and send us into this film.
Sure. I'll give a little synopsis of the film and then just dive into a brief synopsis, I guess, of my immediate thoughts as well. Because I agree, there's a lot to unpack here. Sansho the Bailiff is a 1954 Japanese film that's directed by Kenji Mizoguchi. It's a historical drama set in feudal Japan, or as Mizoguchi calls it at the beginning of the film, the Dark Ages of Japan. And it tells a tragic story of a family that's torn apart when a virtuous governor is exiled, leaving his wife and 2 children to fend for themselves. After they're separated, the siblings are sold into slavery. They're kind of tricked into being sold, and they fall under the command of the cruel and titular Sansho the Bailiff. Throughout the film, we explore a bunch of different themes such as morality, compassion. There's a lot of character development going on, especially with our 2 main characters. And we kind of follow them after a 10-year time jump as they struggle to reunite with their mother, who's in a land far away, also in slavery. So yeah, a lot to unpack. Overall, it is kind of a straightforward storyline. There's not a whole lot of subplots really that are going on, but we're mainly following the 2 children named Zushio and Anju, and they have several different names throughout the film according to their circumstance. And I agree with you, Felix. I think this is one of the better movies that we've watched. I can say with confidence, I don't think it's my favorite Japanese film that we've watched, but it's up there, man. I thought it was really profound on a couple of different levels and made you think, and it got the emotions going, especially there towards the end. And there's a lot of sadness in this film. We were talking before we started recording that Mizoguchi ended up going with the story of the 2 children instead of really revolving around Sansho the Bailiff, who for some reason is the title of the film. But what did you think of that choice? Because I enjoyed the story that we were given.
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed the story as well. Like, you know, it's always funny to go back and watch our like previous podcast episodes, like the ones that I can think of specific, or the one that comes to mind is Fanny and Alexander, where we see the movie and we're like, what the hell is this? Like, and we're just kind of laughing at that. We don't know what, like, we've never heard of this movie before.
Right.
But then you go into it and you are very surprised at the film itself and how much you actually enjoy it. With this one, it was, you know, this is our first, oh, by the way, happy 2025, because this is our first episode. Exactly. So with this being our first film of the new year, it was kind of jarring because, again, we really had no idea what this was, but I instantly fell in love with this movie. And I know I say that a lot, but this this movie rocks. I really liked the story that we got. It was kind of jumping around a little bit in the beginning with all the time jumps. It was a little confusing, but once the children are sold and we get into that kind of like redemption story and all the layers that it has throughout, it's quite the ride.
I don't know if I would use fun.
Yeah, it's some in some aspects, yeah. Like I f- I feel like it's fun in the aspect of like you're rooting for these two to triumph over what's going on.
Yes, and you are rooting for him even after he kind of takes a darker turn. So I think it's like 40 minutes through the movie, we get a 10-year time jump, right? And we've seen Zushio, who was trying to live out his father's words of wisdom, which were essentially be merciful to others and share compassion and love, essentially. And he gives him a goddess of mercy that he carries with him, and it's a family heirloom for them. And as a child, he's trying to live out those words as they're going through these difficult circumstances. And then we time jump 10 years, and the first scene we get back is him branding someone in the face, an old man. And Misoguchi manages to have that massive jarring development just thrown in front of you. And then we get to watch the journey back to that childhood innocence and that childhood mercy as the film progresses. So I thought it was a very interesting approach that I admired, because I thought that we were going to be following the sister and the brother for the duration of the movie. And if you'd like, we can talk about the scene now where it is that Zushio escapes for the first time, because I thought that was the movie went in a very interesting direction there. And that's kind of where we get the setup for the third act.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when that does happen, because it's a lot has happened before that point in time. Like the scene kind of starts where they're taking this one of like the sicker like slaves to essentially just go out and die. They insist that, the two children go and bring her up there because they've known each other for a while. There's a lot of like parallels going on with them, like literally setting up a bed for this woman, much like what they did with their mother before they got kidnapped. Like they're literally picking soft grass to make for bedding, like even to the point of her asking for her brother for help to grab a branch down, which in the beginning it looks really fun and it's like a nice little sibling moment. And now here it's just like it's two adults just trying to do what they can for this other human being.
And that's the first time that we see him soften up. Up until
Correct.
that point, he's been a hard ass.
Because even it's then that Anju thinks that she hears her mother's cries, like calling out for their names. And it's, in the beginning of the movie, Zushio says, "Oh, that's probably just like the waves." Here, like years later, he doesn't even respond to it. So you're left with this just kind of still image of Anju just kind of holding this grass and just kind of staring out, thinking that, all hope has been lost. And then that's when it just clicks into Zushio's head that, okay, let's escape. Like this life isn't for us. Like we can do it. We're so far out of the camp that we can make that attempt happen. She's like, that's great, but I think it'll be better if you do it alone. He's able to go and carry her on her back, and she kind of distracts the guard, saying, "Oh, like he'll take care of Namiji," while they go and escape. And it's here where the movie really picks up. Like up until this point, you're kind of just put into the middle of this circumstance of them just dealing with the life of being a slave. Like they came from nobility to just bottom of the barrel. Like they're there with the peasants, which funny enough is not how their father saw it. And it's one of the reasons that he was exiled, was that, his superiors didn't really agree with his beliefs that, nobility or peasant, everyone is created equal and should have the equal opportunities for happiness. And so this was a very frowned upon mentality to have, but this was something he instilled in his children very early on. And it's, what makes them out to be these incredible people later down in their lives, especially Zushio, when he, is able to escape and just go on this amazing, just
Crazy.
This crazy run.
And before we get into his run and the decision that Anju makes after Zushio runs away, which we will talk about. I think it's interesting that you say that Zushio says to Anju, it may just be the waves, right? And it just clicked in my mind that at the end of the movie, that's where he finds his mother in the wake of what many thought to be a tsunami that killed her. And it's the first time that we see him reunite with one of his relatives. He learns that his father has died and that his sister has died. He finally gets to meet his mother among the waves. So I don't know. I don't know if that was intentional. I'm sure that it was, but just
Probably.
an interesting little thought that popped up in my head while you were discussing that.
And it's in that point too where like he once Anju leaves, he really doesn't see like you said, see another family member until he sees his mom later down the line, because he goes to try and see his father, which was pretty much the whole point of the movie, was them just trying to reunite and get back to their father who was exiled. That's
Right.
literally the synopsis on Letterboxd that we got, which I thought that's like how like the poster is on Letterboxd where it's just like the dude with the hat and the sword. I
Hmm.
thought, okay, this is who Sancho the Bailiff is. Like, we're gonna find out, and then when we meet Sancho the Bailiff, I'm like, oh my god, this is secretly gonna be the father. But then come to find out that the poster is not the father; it's Zushio.
Hmm.
Um, because going down this line now, and if I'm getting ahead of myself, let me know. But he essentially leaves. He goes now. His whole like mantra now is to free all of the slaves in the village, which also
Zushio's
includes
mantra.
his
Yeah.
sister. Yeah, Zushio's mantra is to now free the slaves and his sister, and just pretty much just completely obliterate Sancho the Bailiff. So, and it all starts with him, being held in a monk temple, which he's being like, taken care of by Sancho's son, who has converted to become a monk like years down the line, and is helping him out and says, hey, like, I'm going to send a letter to one of the heads of government in the area
In Kyoto.
to in Kyoto to help out with your situation. This man travels over there and is literally begging for this man to like give him his time. He says he's a son of nobility, like, please believe me, I have this statue, this was my father's. And essentially they're like, yep, this all checks out, by the way,
Well, not
you
at
are now.
first. I like that we're going through it kind of in the order of the plot. I think that's the best way to address this movie. So for that reason, I want to stop for a second, because when the reason that they find out that what Zushio is saying is trustworthy is because they think that he stole the statue of the goddess of mercy,
Yeah.
and they confiscate it from him. And he's so upset that they have removed this family heirloom from his possession. But little does he know in that time that that is them confiscating it is going to be what grants him the ability to eventually become a governor and meet with the head of authority. So it's a blessing in disguise sort of moment that I thought was just another interesting plot point. The movie is very smart in the way that it proceeds with itself, the way that things kind of
Mhm.
fall into place. But did you have any thoughts on that? Like that specific scene,
No,
them
I mean
ripping?
that's exactly what, that's his get out of jail free card, because I mean if he hadn't have had that, and like there's literally a scene when he's still kind of down in the dumps, like I think this is after he brands the dude in the forehead, that he literally takes the statue and like throws it
Right,
away,
right.
and Anju gets so upset and like puts it back into his hands, and I think she even gives the statue to Namiji at some point.
Yes, and she's about to be buried with it or die with it.
Literally. So this shit is moving around, and by the grace of God, he's able to take the statue from Namiji before he, brings her back to the monk temple. And this is his ticket. This is his way of showing that he is a child of nobility and that he is worthy of taking his father's old position, governor of Tango.
Hmm.
This is also where we find out that his father did pass away literally the year prior, which
Yeah,
sucks
yeah,
so hard that we find that out. But I mean, he's not incredibly bothered by it. Like, obviously, like, he's really sad that like his father has passed, but he sees this as an opportunity to make the situation better and continue his father's work. Like, we continue to learn that, like, when he visits his father's grave, that his father, despite being exiled from his village, continued that mantra of treating everybody equally. And we even learned that, like, he taught the peasants of Tango to read and write. Like, it's his father, obviously an incredible human being, and he just wants to continue that mantra by any means necessary. I think he might have been a little bit more aggressive than his father. And I thought this was really funny that when he, is ordained as the governor of Tango, or, he's officially given the title, he's like, I want to ban slavery everywhere. And
Yes.
even like the chief imperial's like, don't do that.
And then he just goes and does it.
That literally, like, he makes it a point to be like, especially in private manners, which that is where Sancho is. Like, he privately owns this land and could pretty much do whatever he wants. Suzio's just like, I don't care, I'm gonna do it
Well,
anyway.
I think that he knows because he resigns immediately after this. So
Mhm.
he knows that this is his end game. Sure, right?
Correct.
And he goes to Sancho the Bailiff, and that is one of the most magnificent scenes in this film is when he confronts Sancho and Sancho recognizes him as his former slave.
Mm-hmm.
And he frees all the slaves and liberates them, and he arrests Sancho the Bailiff. And then 2 scenes later, the entire place is up in flames. And I don't think Zushio gave a shit. I think
No.
that to him, it was the destruction of the thing that was the antithesis to everything that his father had ever taught him. So he had achieved his goal. Now he can resign and go and find his mother. And
Well,
I thought that
before
that
we
was
jump
great.
into that,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say that, after he has liberated the slaves, after he has done so, what is the first thing that he does, Parker, after he frees the slaves?
He asked where his sister is.
And where's his sister?
Well, and I'm glad that we are speaking on this, yes, before we move into the mother quest. But after they had separated on the mountain, bearing Namiji, Anju goes back down to tell the guards, that her brother will be right down. They find that he's run away, and she knows that they're going to take her back and torture her. She has the help of another slave, I forget that character's name, who points the guards in the wrong direction and allows Anju to tie her to a tree and run away. But Anju knows at this point she's going to get caught. She started running long after the authorities were already in the woods looking for her brother. So she walks into a lake and she says to her fellow slave at the time, they cannot learn anything from me from torture if I'm dead. So she commits suicide, essentially to protect any information that would lead the authorities to her brother.
She literally says they can't torture a dead body,
Mm-hmm.
which is, one, super sad, but two, the most badass shit you could say. And then when she's walking into the water, we like get these cuts of her in the water back to the slave that helped her out, like praying. And while all of this is happening, we're getting the song that we've been hearing throughout the movie. And it's, we hear it literally the entire time. It's this song that was sung by her mother after she had been captured and enslaved. And it's something that became very popular in the island that she was enslaved at, that it even reached out to Sancho's camp, where it says, Zushio, how I long for you, isn't life a torture? Anju, how I long for you, isn't life a torture? And it's just this over and over and over again.
And it's a
That,
beautiful song, the way that
oh,
it's
it's
sung.
um
It's
it's
so
so pretty.
grieful and sad. It carries such a tragic feeling with it.
Hmm.
And it's really good, unlike the rest of the soundtrack, which I didn't like, but we'll get to
Okay.
that.
But again, that quest line has ended, and we obviously, Zushio is incredibly upset because, I mean, freeing Anju was like one of the main reasons that he even took the governorship and took down Sancho's entire operation. But now he resigns from being the governor, obviously, because what he did was pretty illegal. and he is now just a normal person again, which he then travels to, what is it called?
And I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
you again now, and because I want to
Oof, please
hover,
do.
I want to hover on Anju's decision to do what she did, if we could for a moment, because I'm
Yeah, go
curious
for
what
it.
you thought about that. Because I'm all for an emotional decision in any movie where there's a tough decision that's made in sacrifice to protect someone that character loves. However, what I don't like is when it happens and it's not absolutely necessary. It feels a little bit more contrived is not necessarily the right word that I'm looking for. Maybe a little bit forced. And I understand the emotional impact that it has. However, I feel as though there was still a story, a reasonable story to be told in which that did not have to happen. And I get that people make decisions all the time in life that don't make any sense under difficult circumstances, such as the ones that they were in. But I'm curious how you felt about it. Like, did it ever pop into your brain like, okay, that definitely did not need to happen?
It did not. And
Really?
I'll tell
Okay.
you why.
Yeah,
This
I'd
is
love to hear
where
it.
I'm
I'd love
like,
to hear it.
I do disagree with you. In terms of, again, she states that they can't torture a dead body. Even if she were alive, they would have obviously like tortured the shit out of her and done everything they possibly could to get the information out of her. And I don't feel that she would have, period, because of that connection and love that she has for her brother, to which she probably could have been tortured like to death,
Right, she probably
essentially.
so I'm not disagreeing with that. I think the decision that I have an issue with more so is the fact that I feel as though she would have had a shot going with her brother. And she kept trying to convince him that they would be caught if they were running away together, which I understand, like she may not have his endurance or whatever it may be.
And
I
I
get
think
that,
that
but
might be it,
is that what
but
it is then? Like,
I
because
think it
that's
just
the
might that
decision.
like she's not more strong-willed enough, or I mean, she could have not foreseen
Or I suppose she
there was
did
no way
buy
she
him
could have
time.
foreseen the things that could have happened to him to get to that point again. But I think her drowning was her way of saying, if I'm going to do this, if at this point, like no matter what decision I make, I'm going to die, I'm going to do it on my own
Right,
terms,
right.
and
No,
I'm
that
going
decision
to.
so that decision I get, and I think it was incredibly impactful. The decision more so that I have a little bit of controversy with is the original one to even go back to the guard and try to delay more in the first place.
So, are you saying that they could have had a shot at escaping together?
Yes, when they realize that they want to escape.
Okay,
I think they could have gone together and who knows what happens? Maybe they capture her and then she dies and that's what happens.
yeah.
I don't know, but
And I don't know either. Like the movie doesn't really paint a picture of her having this weakness. Because I mean, to me, Anju
right.
is one of the stronger characters in the movie.
Absolutely.
Like she's, if it weren't for her, Zushio would have continued to just be the bailiff's bitch boy. Like he would have just. I mean, there's no other way around it. Like he was, you see him in the beginning of the movie, and he is all about his father's mantra, and then we get that 10-year jump, and I mean, slavery and working as a slave has completely broken him to
Mhm.
where he's just doing whatever this man wants because it's what's keeping him alive and it's what's keeping him like fed, clothed, with a roof over his head, despite like how bad it is, but like
Mhm.
it's a living, and he doesn't want anything to mess around with that. But Anju wants to continue that spirit because that's not what her parents would have wanted.
Mhm.
So I think, she's incredibly strong-willed. I just don't think she had the confidence in herself, like physically, to be able to carry on that mission with Zushio. That she thinks that like if anyone is going to make it out of the situation and, avenge us, it's going to be you.
Mhm.
But I think Anju served her purpose in progressing and helping Zushio get out of his funk and be able to pretty much avenge his family
Yeah, I
at the
agree with you
cost
there.
of her own life.
She and the song, like I agree with you. Yes, without Anju's decisions, we would never have the redemption arc of Zushio, right? She
Mhm.
absolutely is the creator of that.
And there was a point where she was ready to give it all up. Like she's in the little seamstress place, and she's ready to start just training this new girl and just just keep going on with her life until she hears that song.
And speaking of the song, there's two things, because we're gonna move into Zushio's quest to find his mom here in a second. But I want to touch on two things. One, the song I think is an excellent plot catalyst. Like, it's so unique and interesting that this song has found its way across Japan, and it's a song about our two main characters from their long lost mother. I mean, I was like, holy shit, like it's crazy, right? So I really loved that aspect of the movie. And then I also love too that whenever Zushio goes back to Sansho the Bailiff's manor, he has the moment with the older man that he had branded on the face, and he gets to tell him, I'm sorry that I've done this, and nothing that I can ever do will make up for the fact that I've committed this heinous act against you. But please take this as a symbol of me knowing that what I did was wrong, and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that you know.
And this is the beginning of me trying to make it up to you.
Right.
Which, like you said, it was incredible. Like,
is that the exact verbiage that was on the sub?
I think so.
Because the way that it was written was way better than how I just described it. It was so beautifully written and delivered and performed.
Insert it right here.
私がお前の死体に焼きごてを当てた罪はどんなことがあっても消えはしない。しかしこの罪のせめて万分の一でも償えるものなら償いたい。
We get the burning of Sansho's manor, and we see it from the window of Zushio's governor house. And
Which
it's
is
then
such a cool ass shot.
Such a great shot.
Cool.
A lot of great composition in this film, which we'll get to in our rankings, I think. But then Zushio hands in his resignation and says, arrange for me to go to Sado and find my mother. He doesn't say that, but he says, make arrangements for my travel. And he goes to Sado. And then he's ashore. He walks into a brothel. And I really thought that it was going to be a scene of his mother trying to seduce him without realizing that it's her son. And that, in my mind, was like, wow, that's fucking heartbreaking. And then that's not what happens. She's thought to be dead. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is just as sad of an ending. Everyone is dead in this movie. And maybe Zushio did this kind of not in vain, but he never got his family back after all that he had, endured. But that's not what happens still. And we actually get a somewhat sweet ending, which is a little bit refreshing, if I'm being honest. I think a lot of these, world-renowned films tend to err on the side of tragedy. And while what has happened to his mother is not a blessing by any means, she's had her body sold for years upon years, and now she's essentially blind and crippled on a beach. But he hands her, again, we see it for the final time, the goddess of mercy, and she feels it, and she knows that it is her son. It is not someone trying to deceive her. And finally, they have come back together. And the fact that he's not governor anymore, while it's upsetting, it doesn't necessarily matter because they're back in each other's arms. And while Anju's gone, and that's terrible, their father's gone, and that's terrible, mother and son have come back together and embraced after years of hardship. And I thought it was very pointed. I thought it was very well done. And then we get our credits.
Yeah, there was no better way to end this movie where, it's still obviously very tragic because this family still lost everything. Like, they went from being the nobles in their village and like being pretty much the only ones in their village with a house that we see, that now they're outside of a decrepit house after a tsunami in tattered clothing. It's just, and obviously emotionally and physically destroyed, but they still are able to revel in the fact that like they're together again. Her songs have come true. Like, yes, life is tragic, but she has her children back, or she has her child back. Like, and it sucks hearing her even ask like, oh, if you're here, then Anju's here. Where is she? And it's just, she went to join father. It's heartbreaking. Funny enough, there was, after watching this movie, on the Criterion channel, there is a video of Ari Aster talking about this movie, which
You sent that
will
to
go.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, and for some reason you have to log into the Criterion channel to watch it, and it's not on YouTube. Yeah, it's really stupid. But something that he says that kind of resonated with me because I felt the same way is that he said every time I watch that last scene, I cry at the same points every time. It makes me want to make amends with everyone in my life because you could have it hard and you could have these, falling out with people in your life, but I don't think anything can get worse than what's happening to these two people who went from nobility and having everything you could possibly want to literally the only thing you have is each other. And at the end of the day, that's all you could really have.
Hear me out. There's a bit of this film in Beau is Afraid, so that doesn't surprise me. Hear him say that. Have you seen Beau is Afraid?
I still have not seen Beau is
I mean,
Afraid.
I mean, on a very base level. I mean, a man's quest to reunite with his mother. I mean,
Fair. Yeah, that part I know about, but I still need to watch it. I know you have your feelings, but
it's worth a watch. I mean, it's just it's not an easy thing to watch, and not in a good way. Like some things are hard to watch in a good way.
yeah.
This is just not great to watch. But
But
I
it's,
guess
but it's just so funny to like see, Ari Aster, like he's known for like these horrific imagery and in Hereditary and in Midsummer and in maybe in Beau is Afraid, but like to see like something like that, and it's kind of falls under like what we talked about with Stanley Kubrick and Wild Strawberries, that like there are these beautiful movies that you could have that influence some of the craziest minds in all of film. Like
yeah,
like out of anybody who I could have seen like talking about this film, I did not think about Ari Aster. But
yeah,
Ari
right.
Aster just also seems like a really chill guy. Like I mean, he's probably venting through all of his movies, but I mean, from the interview, I'm like, I could have a beer with Ari Aster.
That beer would be your last.
Probably come out of it with my head decapitated, but like who knows,
Yeah.
dude. But I think that is unless you have any final thoughts to say about Sancho the Bailiff.
No, let's take a small break and let's hop into the rankings.
Wait, how much do you have left?
What?
How much do you have Damn,
That's honestly,
dude.
it's melted ice.
Oh my god. All right, cool. So I think it's only fair that we just jump right into our rankings here for enjoyability and rewatchability. Like I said, this was honestly one of my favorite of the Japanese films that we've seen. Obviously, it's no High and Low. I really like High and Low, but I feel that this movie is a good segue into, I mean, I hope that we get a Miyazaki film. No, not a Miyazaki film, a Kurosawa going into the after this, because that's all I could think about was like Seven Samurai and just the way that it looks. And I
Have we already
love
had
that.
Kurosawa?
Yeah, High and
High and
Low.
low. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like feudal Japan Kurosawa,
Yeah.
like those old samurai movies that like that's all I could think about, like with the set design, the costumes, amazing, but that'll fall into visual and auditory. While it wasn't like my favorite at much, I still gave it a 12. I mean, this movie is just such a it's such a it's such an uplifting film with, obviously with everything sad that's going on into it. You just can't help but just continue to like yell at your television and be like, hell yeah, Zushio, get that fucking bag. Go kick Sancho's ass. Like,
Get that back.
get that bag. You're rooting for him the entire time, and just everything is on the up and up. And like, even to the point where at the end, when I literally was like, okay, we're going to find like his mom's dead body or whatever. But then when you see her, it's just like, you become instantly gratified and you're just so happy that he's finally found his mom. And it's something that like, while I won't like rewatch it like obviously within the next like week or even month, it's something that I can pop in and be and have a good time watching it. Like, I'm so glad that I was introduced to this movie.
Yeah, I agree with you on the enjoyment of the first time watch. However, I was not something that I think would be incredibly rewatchable for me. I gave it an 8 out of 15 because I did enjoy my viewing, but it's not something that I necessarily am going to go back to. I think I'll carry it forward, and I think there's a lot to weigh on the brain in terms of a lasting impression, which has its own category, but enjoyable, not necessarily super rewatchable. For story, however, I think that the story is really, really strong. I give it a 13 out of 15. This is based off of, I believe, Japanese folklore as well as a short story. So there is a history of this type of story that has gone on, but it's so well done. And the story is so captivating and it has so many lessons to teach and so much development and so much care for the characters that it's presenting, with really the exception of Sancho the Bailiff. Like, we probably could have got a little bit more of him, but on the whole,
With him being the title of the fucking
right,
movie.
right. But on the whole, I mean, a classic story of resilience and perseverance and tragedy. So I'm curious what you gave this. I think it'll be high.
No, I actually gave it a 13 out of 15 as well.
Okay. Yeah.
This was, it's a very triumphant story. Like, it's, start like it's so dumb to say, but like, you know, being noble and then being brought back down to the level of peasant, even though there wasn't really like that kind of story arc of like, oh, like I hate the peasants. They always saw the peasants as equals, and now they're thrown into that, and they don't have that kind of jaded mentality that they're just like, okay, like this is a fellow man, this is a fellow human. But it also still has that, like, that story arc, like, of a triumph, of like starting from slavery and becoming like something greater than that. And I thought it was very interesting, and it was very uplifting for a story that has a lot of sad elements, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, with this like being based in some folklore and some fables here and there, obviously it's not the most original thing I've seen, but in the way that it was portrayed, I feel it was pretty original.
Yeah, well put, especially the transition from nobility to poverty and back and then back again.
I loved that. I always love a good triumph story. Lasting impression, I'd give this a 12, just because this is something that, like, I was very surprised by this film. Like, I could even find myself, like, at times, like, having to, like, incorrectly typing it into the search bar in the Criterion channel, just because I'm like, is it Shanchi? Is it shoot? Like, something I could not remember the name for the life of me. But then I finally found it. I watched the movie, and now I'm like, I cannot forget this movie anymore. Like, this is a very good, very good Japanese film. It's not something, obviously, that's going to sit with me for like immediately, but it has certainly had its impact in Hollywood at large. Obviously, like, you have fucking Ari Aster talking about this movie, and I'm sure several others have been influenced by this movie, and it's something that'll sit with me for a little while.
I agree
What
with
did you
you. I
think?
gave it a 12.
Nice.
I think that the themes at play here are really going to continue to weigh on me, and it'll just be a movie that I continue to think about and chew on a little bit. And it has a lot to teach. I think it's like, not that this is a good children's movie, but it teaches a lot about perseverance in a sense, and it's kind of an odd way to do so, or an odd thing to apply to the movie, but there's so much at stake here for the characters that we're following, and it's all familial. And I think that family too, for me, always has played a big part in my life. So I think that it definitely impacted me on the emotional side of things, and just being separated and having your father be exiled for beliefs that he's continuing to instill in you, and then you straying from those beliefs and finding your way back towards them. I mean, I just thought there's a lot to continue to think about with this film personally, and of course, it's going to have its influence because it's one of the greats. So I think we're great sitting at even at 12s there for
And
visual and
I
auditory.
honestly like, and sorry to
No,
interrupt
go
you, but
ahead.
just like just going back onto the beliefs that their father had, it's like it's something that like you watch here in 2024 and you're like, I mean, duh, like you want to treat your fellow men equally, but like even in like feudal Japan, like it's something that's like completely unheard of, but it's still like I agree with you. This, while it's not particularly violent, but it is very graphic in the imagery and the themes that it's trying to portray. But I honestly think that everybody can learn something from this movie. It's funny that this will be the third movie where we'll say that this portrayed the human condition better than the
And the
first
human
human
condition.
than the human condition. But yeah, that this just showed that the human condition is truly unbreakable and that it can persevere through literally the worst that humanity has to offer. I just think that, like you said, there's something to learn from that, and there's something that can be brought to the views of a child, and that they can
Well,
learn something from it and benefit from it.
and across cultures as well, because America has its own history of slavery here that this could just as well be applied to. And even today, you know that these things like human trafficking is a very real thing. It is a very real
Mm-hmm.
thing, and families are being separated. So and of course, that's not the story that we're seeing here, but it's still one that is sadly applicable in no matter where you pick it up and drop it. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and it's just a shitty thing to talk about, but it's it's the truth. It's it's based in reality, not necessarily just in feudal Japan. This is a story that anyone can relate to.
And I like how this movie doesn't throw those themes at you outright. Like
Hmm.
it's still focused on the story that it's telling, and it's, I think, predominantly focused on the story that it's telling. Like it's not trying to like point the camera in a different direction and be like, "Don't you think that all like people like?" It's just
Right,
it's
right.
continuing the story, but the themes are there for you to see, not to be told, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm like, just get with the story, and we can form our own opinions about what's happening throughout, much like a Bergman film that, he's just trying to tell the story and have you implement your own thoughts on what's going on. And I love that. And I'm loving that Misoguchi was able to do that through this film as well, which this was like, he was like in his 80s when he made this film, or like he was very old. I think Ari Aster talked about how this was like his 80th film that he had made towards the end of his life,
Wow.
or towards the end of his tenure like as a director, but he's still able to make an impact like this through this film. And I think it's one of, and I mean, I want to watch some more Misoguchi films after this, but it goes to show that, like, life and experiences can just make your craft better, that you're able to learn more and be able to hone your craft into something that is what I truly think is a masterpiece.
Hmm.
But let me know what you think about visual and auditory.
Yes. So moving on, I'm glad that we had that little sidebar there. But moving
Yeah.
on into visual and auditory appeal, loved the way that the film looked. Borderline hated the way that the film sounded, and I'm sorry. Maybe it's just not for me. But this much of the score was just absolutely horrendous to listen to, in my opinion. And maybe that's okay. Yeah, you can apply that to the themes at play here. It to me, it just sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Like I
Oh
don't
my
mean to be
god.
brash or I'm just sharing my feelings here. Okay, a lot of the score was very screechy and very just unappealing. The composition of the film was great. I think that the song that they sing was great and very effective. I give it a 7, and I'm knocking it down. I think that the composition and the look of the film is probably at a 9. The score is probably at a 6. So I guess the middle there would be, yeah, a 7.5, and I'll knock it down to a 7. No hate, no hate. Hey, we're just sharing our thoughts here, right?
I don't see where this hate is coming from, bro.
Did you not think that the score was incredibly screechy and it sounded like banshees?
It sounded like banshees.
Sorry.
No,
No
I didn't.
offense to, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people really loved the way that this film sounded, and no offense to Fumio Hayasaka, who did the score here and the music, but
Mhm.
it just wasn't for me.
So I gave it a 9 out of 10. Um, I did not have an issue with the music per se. I thought it was fine. Like it wasn't obviously the most memorable, but I I think the song that we get made up for it a lot because it's like you said, it's a very good plot device for us to start this journey of finding the mother and knowing that there's a great possibility that she's alive. Like that was very unique. I also really loved the way this movie looked. The cinematography was incredible. The costumes were gorgeous to look at. Like all of like the kimonos and even like the armor that we see like in the beginning of the movie that almost like really resembles like samurai armor. It looks fucking dope. I loved everything about that. Feudal Japan is like one of my favorite like things to just look at. Like there's a literally I have a note here that in the beginning of the film that there's a flute that's playing in the background that it brought me right back to Ghost of Tsushima. Do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
So it's a game that came out in 2020. It was like one of the first like games that I got into like during the pandemic. It's takes place a little bit like later on. Like this is like early like 11th century Japan. Ghost of Tsushima takes place in like 12th century, but it's very heavily influenced by like Kurosawa and like all those samurai films,
Oh,
and
that's
like
cool.
the soundtrack is
Oh,
predominantly
that
like
game was very visually like beautiful, right? If I'm
yes. Oh my
okay, I
god, it's
remember it. I
gorgeous.
remember the release of it. Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
had the
and
cherry
so
blossoms or something. Like,
yeah, and like a lot of like the like yellow trees
yeah,
dude, that game, it's one of my favorite games of all time. That game got me through the pandemic along with Animal Crossing, but like that one was a pretty big one. Just the way that that game looked and the way that it sounded, like because the character also has a flute that like he can just start playing and you learn songs, like it made me think of that a lot, and so it made me feel really cozy listening to that flute going on throughout the like some of the pivotal parts of the movie, like when his father's getting exiled, and then again a lot of like the just everything around the way the movie looked was incredible. I feel comfortable giving it a 9. Obviously it wasn't like groundbreaking visuals like that we saw in like Spirited Away and Lawrence of Arabia, but it made me feel it, like looking at it made me feel very cozy and just like all right, and especially with it being the beginning of the film, it set the tone for the rest of the film there. I also just really liked the hats.
the
I
hats were great.
loved
I want one.
the hats were fucking dope, bro. For
Real quick,
pace,
and I want to
yes.
move into pacing, but at the end of the last episode, I think you and I both thought we were maybe getting into a samurai movie here. And the first note that I have is like, this is not a samurai movie.
Yeah,
Anyways, the pacing. What do you think of the pacing? I
no,
was
I
entertained.
definitely thought so too. I thought we were going to get into a samurai movie, but here we are. I'm glad with what we got though. I gave the pacing a 7. There were some parts when we're in the camp where like obviously yes, you have to build the tension around like how shitty this camp is and like everything that's going on around it. I feel like we could have spent a little less time with that. Like we understood what was going on, and like I wanted to just continue to see the rest of the movie and see the triumph that they have over like what's going on, like specifically like the scene where like the chief imperial comes to town, into Sancho's mansion, and they're like having that like big party, and then there's like a dance sequence. I was like, we
Mhm.
didn't need all of that. like
Yeah, I think the
like it
pacing really struggled in the beginning of the film, and then it gradually got better. I also gave it a
Mhm.
7 here. And I agree with you.
Okay.
I think that the movie got off to a little bit of a slower start. Not a bad start. I was still interested in what was going on, but I was finding myself wanting it to kind of pick up a little bit. And then it did, but it didn't really. And so I feel good with a 7 there. For the most part, it's a well paced film, but it is a little on the longer side. It clocks in at 2 hours and 4 minutes. Yeah, I definitely felt like some of it I could have gone without, or maybe it could have been replaced with something a little bit more interesting.
You think it could have been a nice crisp 145?
I actually was just thinking that. Yeah, I gave the
It
acting
is.
an 8. I thought that it was thought that it was good all around. I don't really have anything crazy great to say or anything bad to say. I thought it was pretty good. I think it was an 8. How do you
Mhm.
feel about the acting? I mean, there were difficult performances to be had here, but it
Yeah,
was
I
it was all
gave it
good. It was all good. Yeah.
I gave it an actually no, pause. I gave it an 8. Just for the same things, like the performances that we get from our two main characters are astounding. They're really
Yes.
well
Yeah.
performed, like the depth, especially like the adult versions. Like, well, first off, the kid actors are really good in this movie.
Mhm.
Like they are able to portray that range of emotions of like, being kids and having fun, like building this little makeshift like house together for their mom is nice, and it helps you build that relationship with them. And then when they're thrown into into the slave trade, they're instantly changed and instantly just their emotions range very well for those kid actors. And then when we get to their adult versions, they're played even better. Especially Zucchio, because we spend so
Mhm.
much time with him towards the end of the film. He displays such a range of emotions of just being completely defeated and losing all hope, to gaining a lot of hope and gaining a lot of confidence and power in himself, to then dropping back down and then being uplifted. Like he is on a roller coaster of emotions. And shout out Zushio, played by Yoshiaki Hanayagi, and Anju, played by Kyoko Kagawa, are the two main characters that we see throughout the film for the adult versions of these characters, but they play them pretty close to perfection. Like there's not a point where I'm like kind of taken out of it. Honestly, the performance that kind of was like throwing me for a loop was Sancho. Like
I agree. Yeah.
I couldn't really see him as this like big bad guy, especially if you're the title of the movie. Like I just kind of thought he was silly. Like I
Yeah,
didn't
and
really
just
like
not
there
there
was
just wasn't enough time spent, and he never crossed the line. And I get that we're doing the whole face branding thing. Like that is
that was
objectively
really the only like evil
that's
thing that he
horrible.
was really
Yeah,
doing.
right. Like I think they really could have gone a little bit further with like how fucking brutal this guy Sancho is.
Yeah.
And it's no fault of the actors. I think he took what he was given, but that it does prevent an astounding performance from being given because the material is not written for it to be performed. So therefore, the opportunity was never there in his case.
And that goes into my suspension of disbelief.
Mhm.
That's actually the lower score that I gave at a 6 out of 10.
Oh, tell me about that.
One, yeah. So obviously, one of them being the either direction or how the actor was performing Sancho. Like, I never really felt like this dude was like complete like shit villain levels. Like, I just kind of thought he was a silly little guy with a
Mhm.
really shitty
Okay.
facial hair.
Facial hair.
Like, yeah, I really didn't see him, or like was able to like kind of connect with him being this like god awful villain. Like to me, like there could have been so much more that he could have maybe done or had portrayed. Like I feel like his like slave drivers were worse people than he were,
Sure. Yeah, his
in my
main right
opinion.
hand man was
And
an
my
asshole.
biggest fucking gripe with this movie is the mom's decision to go and take housing from this random priestess, even though right before that, her handler is like, oh, be careful. There's like slave traders and all these people trying to invite like people into their homes, but they get kidnapped. But then that's literally what happened. Like, I'm sorry. her mom, like obviously the dad got exiled and everything, but their mom completely ruined their entire fucking life.
I mean, she's trying
Like,
to help them.
I know, but like if you're being told literally like there are slave drivers out there, like just be on the lookout, and then you find literally the first person that comes up to you and is like, I have a home. And she's like, okay, whatever. And like obviously, like when they get there, like the priestess is like, inviting them in. They are able to sleep for the night and get warm food and being told, oh, yeah, there's a boat that can take you out. And then they get fucking kidnapped. And I'm just like, that was your fault, bro. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was my biggest gripe with the movie. And that, like, obviously up until like that point, I was like, oh my God, like, this is really dumb. But then after that, we get such a beautiful movie that I'm like, I guess like it needs to happen. I don't know.
Right.
That's what I feel
Right.
comfortable with.
I understand. I get where you're coming from. I'm surprised. Usually I am the low score in suspension of disbelief. I give it an 8. I think that there were some
Ooh.
qualms that I had. The main issues I had personally were with the decision of the sister to go and dissuade the guard from coming back, because I think we could have got an interesting movie with both of them trying to escape and then maybe something following what happens. But I'm not going to let me thinking that a different storyline would be just as interesting negate from my suspension of disbelief, because at the end of the day, I think it was at least somewhat reasonable of a character choice. And I do agree with you in the sense that the mother knew that there were bandits on the loose. I also think that I was confused as to why she was just blind, like all of a sudden.
That too. Yeah,
Um,
like no, but I was really confused by that because I'm like, is she blind? Is she, because like she's kind of like feeling the statue, but then she's also like, let me look at you.
yeah, maybe
I'm like,
she's
but
just
aren't you
super
blind?
nearsighted. But yeah, at the end of the day,
Or
like
she's just fucking old, Parker.
they keep saying over 40, as I guess I don't know. It was a long time ago. Fucking
You know
maybe
what's
that was
over 40? 80. Also, this ain't
fuck
go.
you.
What did you think of
Originality.
originality?
Yeah, I just gave it like a super basic rating of a 7. Just to
Okay.
omit myself from any controversy. I know it's based off of folklore. I know that there was a short film of a similar plot that was filmed uh, 35 years before this. I still thought that it was unique in many aspects. I think it was a story that was beautifully presented, but it really didn't do anything crazy outside of the box. So I'm just going with a safe 7.
And I'm slightly agree. I gave it an 8. I would say
Suck
that
up.
like yes, the shut up. The way that the story was portrayed and like kind of like what we mentioned before of like, going from like rags to somewhat riches, like that storyline was told in a pretty unique way, in that the noble characters already had this mentality of that everyone is equal, and that we're all human beings and that we all have our own right at happiness.
Hmm.
So I thought that was a really nice, like, especially because like in feudal Japan, obviously that's not something that they would all be thinking about. Like the class system in that time was very, very fucked. But to have that kind of mentality, be at the forefront of in this time and in a movie like this was something that I thought was very highly original. And I just that's where I'll leave it. For personal attachment, I gave it a 3 because it is one of those movies that I did enjoy watching it. I felt a very strong connection while watching the movie at first, and obviously it was a very big surprise for me. Like, I will continue to hold on to this movie, but it's not something that it's not a Spirited Away or Empire Strikes Back. Like, it's not something that has completely changed my life in a way.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I also gave it a 3. Yeah, I agree with you. I liked it. Didn't I don't think that it's something that's going to change my like when I get into 4 and 5 category, I'm like, okay, this movie's like changing the fundamentals of my personality at the moment, you know.
Fair.
And this does not come close to breaking that seal, but I still think it's a very poignant film, and I think that it had an emotional impact on me. So I'm good at a 3 there. So boom, dude. All right, Sancho the Bailiff down. We've got an average score of 75.5. Where does it land on the list?
It ties with a Separation.
All right. I think that's
That's
fitting in my
crazy.
mind. I would put this probably above a Separation, personally.
You think so?
Do you
Yeah,
would you
I
would you
I
put it below?
agree.
Well, oh, okay.
No,
Did we
I
did we
agree.
have a system established for
We
this?
did about a personal attachment, but I agree. I liked this movie more
Well,
than a
take it.
Separation.
What was our average rating of personal attachment for a Separation? If you don't mind pulling up the
We
archives.
had the archives. We had an average of 3 for this movie. I gave
Yeah.
Separation a 2.
Okay. I know I didn't give it a 4. So yeah, Sancho the Bailiff will go above a
Yeah.
Separation.
I just also I enjoyed this movie more than a Separation.
Yeah, I enjoyed a Separation more, but I think that this was a better movie.
Well, there you go.
All right. Yeah, I
Sancho the
think that's a good
Bailiff.
spot for it. In my mind, I think that's a good spot.
Yeah, same.
I mean, every movie above it is a fucking fantastic film.
Correct. Right below Love Exposure, which is crazy.
Every time I see it, I'm just so shocked that Wild Strawberries is our favorite Bergman film.
Well, because it was my favorite Bergman film, and I inflate those numbers, bro.
Fair enough.
But
all right.
okay.
So how many movies do we have now? 17?
We do have 17, yes.
All right, dude. 3 films
We're
will
about
be
to-
on our 20th. That's crazy.
There's only one way to get
on
through it,
chugging.
my guy. Keep
And
on
before
chugging.
we spin the wheel, I want to say that a couple of our videos have been getting some comments and some likes and some views. And if you are one of those couple of people that are following along with us, thank you so much for listening to us just rant about movies. And when we really don't know that much, we're really just sitting here talking about our feelings towards these films that we're fortunate enough to watch. So if you're enjoying following along with us here, thanks so much for being here. It's cool to see you guys interact. And if you disagree with us, I encourage you, sound off in the comments. We want to see y'all's opinions on the movie, on our takes. We want to hear your takes. Open our eyes up a little bit, because at the end of the day, we're just 2 guys. We don't know anything. So
we're just 2 little guys, bro.
Yeah.
And it's funny that we got those comments in Woman in the Dunes, which we thoroughly
one of our least favorite
fucking
films.
hated.
But it's awesome, because I don't think Woman in the Dunes, it's hard for me to sit there and say that was a bad movie. It's just one that I didn't personally enjoy on any level.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was fun to see that. So
no, but that's great. I by no means do I discourage that. I live to see other people's opinions on movies. I think it's a great thing.
It's why we make these videos in the first place. Obviously,
Exactly.
it's for us to just stick around and talk about movies, but it's to, fuel a conversation and to fuel a love of cinema and other people that say, you know what, I haven't really watched Woman in the Dunes in a while, but that was a good point, or that was a really shitty point. Let me tell you about why you're wrong.
And an
Parker
extra
said,
thank you if you stick with us through all of the takes that you disagree with on a personal level, extra props.
Correct.
Props. We're happy you're here. Shall we?
Exactly. Your feelings are validated, but as always, we are putting Sancho the Bailiff up in the governor house, watching this podcast burn with. No, I'm just kidding. We're doing with enthusiasm.
It's been a
and
great
excitement
episode,
it has been a great episode, but we are now going to be fueled with excitement for what other movie we will be watching.
Go for it.
Hold on, I'm looking at one.
Why are there no Harry Potter films on this freaking list?
That's what I'm saying, dude. Not even Prisoner of Azkaban. Actually, no, Goblet of Fire is the best Harry Potter film.
Just put one of them.
I'll just throw one in there. Who cares? Yeah. You're not counting. All right, let's spin it, baby. Oh my god, I love this. But I'm also
we gotta talk about Heretic as well. Sidebar.
Oh, true.
What do we got? What do we got?
Another Ghibli film.
Oh my gosh, this wheel is on a roll. I didn't even know that Princess Mononoke was on this list.
It is, dude. I'm so excited. Wow. Oh my god.
This wheel wants us to watch Studio Ghibli ASAP.
They said watch that Miyazaki film,
these are
bro.
some good movies.
Hell yes, dude.
For those
Hang on.
listening and not watching, we pulled Princess Mononoke, which Felix is very excited about. I have never seen this movie.
I've
At
just
the
heard that
time
this
of
movie is fucking badass, dude.
at the time of this list creation, Princess Mononoke was number 70 on the top 100 list. Dude, In Bruges, whoever watched In Bruges, you got to watch In Bruges. That's a fucking
What?
amazing movie.
What are
On
you
your home
talking
screen.
about?
Sorry, I just saw In Bruges on your home screen, and I was like, "That's a great movie. You should watch it."
Hold on, wait, what are we? Oh, In Bruges, yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
it was Joe Lynch. Pop
Uh-huh.
off, Joe Lynch. All right.
All right. So Princess Mononoke. Bring us through it, Felix.
Yes, so this is our third Studio Ghibli film, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. So our second Miyazaki film, and one that, or well, I didn't have a rating for Grave of the Fireflies either, but it's currently sitting at a 4.4 rating on Letterboxd with 372,000 five-star reviews. The synopsis here is: the fate of the world rests on the courage of one warrior. Ashitaka, a prince of the disappearing Emishi people, is cursed by a demonized boar god and must journey to the west to find a cure. Along the way, he encounters San, a young human woman fighting to protect the forest, and Lady Eboshi, who is trying to destroy it. Ashitaka must find a way to bring balance to this conflict. And I'm glad that that's all we have for it, because this is probably the first Ghibli film that I don't know like what the story is, just based off of what we have on the synopsis.
Have
But
you seen this movie?
I have not seen it, but all I've
Oh,
heard is just incredible things about this
yeah,
movie.
dude.
So
Princess Mononoke wasn't even mentioned in that synopsis.
correct. So
So
it'll be
interesting.
exciting to see exactly what that means, but I am very excited to watch this movie. This movie has been on my watch list for a while, and I've been putting it off just cuz I knew it was on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that we're finally getting it. It's going to be crazy.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm excited. It's crazy that we're doing this random thing and that we've had so much Studio Ghibli already. Just like
I know.
with Bergman, I it's been very interesting. And there's going to be a complete switch up in the type of movies that we had it there for a second, where we had boom, Empire Strikes Back, and then boom, Parasite. And that was a real quick switch up. And
Mhm.
it's been interesting, the progression through almost 20 films now. You know what it is that we've gotten, and some of the similarities the films have that we've
Correct.
pulled.
And that we're only almost 20% of the way through. Like I keep
Dude, props to us.
underestimating how many
We're
fucking movies we have left.
we're plugging along though, dude. We are.
We really are. This has been so much fun, and I'm glad that we're getting sprinkled in with like random movies that we haven't really necessarily heard of, but like we've been liking a lot more of these random movies that we've been getting. Like
Mm.
obviously with like exception to Woman in the Dunes that we don't have really strong feelings for, like a lot of these movies have been really good. So
Well, yeah,
props.
and Human Condition I'd put down there
Yeah.
too, personally,
But
which is
again,
crazy because I'm just glad we're getting to watch these films. Like, to see a film on the top 100 list of all time and not have have seen it, or to have your own personal understanding of that film, like, that's a tragedy, man. I don't want to not see these movies. So I'm still happy
no.
that we got to watch Woman in the Dunes, and that we got to watch Human Condition, and that we're getting to watch all of
Mhm.
these films. There's so much discovery to be had, and this has been a great episode. It's been a great series so far. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
yeah, man, here's to Princess Mononoke in 1 week.
Same here.
Go
Same
watch it.
here.
If you're listening and you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Absolutely. And if you have seen it already, go watch it again, because I've heard it's incredible. But as always, Parker, it's been fun to, kind of jump on the horn here with you and talk movies as always. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Letterboxd at Parker_Paget, and on the LetterBros podcast, which is a cool podcast I do with my friend Felix, where we talk about the top 100 movies on the Letterboxd top 100 list. Yeah.
Yeah, as you should, if you weren't already doing that. You can find me on Letterboxd at ETZIO911. You can find the LetterBros on Instagram, LetterBros Pod, for all reels, news, updates, everything. And just make sure to review this podcast and leave any comments, what you liked, what you didn't like. And as always, thank you, Parker. This is the LetterBros podcast, and we will see you at the movies.